Moving into exercise 3, we are going to create a dynamic list. The scenario here is the sales team is working with the marketing team to properly segment their audience based on a specific industry. They would like to have a list automated for them based on their leads who work in the media industry, so they may continue to nurture those leads associated with their high-value accounts. So on the task side there, we're going to create a dynamic list, and we're going to use industry equals media as the criteria, and then we'll also give you some examples of other ways that you can segment your data in the system here. So let's go to the prospects tab, and just so that I'm not having a million tabs open, let's close that one out. So segmentation list, this is one of those things in the system. The account engagement makes it super simple for you to find it because you will be segmenting a lot and working with segmentation lists. So it's on several different tabs: prospects, automations, account engagement, email. You can find it in several different places. I typically default to the prospects just because you're working with prospects a lot and it's easy to remember and click over there. So we're going to add a list here, and we'll call this ABM webinar list. We need to select a folder. So I'm going to put it in my 2023 demo folder. And then the other thing here that we need to focus on is we're going to select dynamic list. So what we're doing here is we're basically setting up a criteria or multiple criteria that determine list membership. So you are automating that process and reducing the manual labor and tasks involved with managing your different lists for your email sends. Once you feed the criteria to the system, we're going to click Run Rules. And at that point, the system will constantly be evaluating whether a prospect matches it and is a member of the list, or if they stop matching, it will remove them immediately. So that's how it functions. It does remove any manual control that you have over the list. So that's an important thing to flag here. There are other scenarios. We talked about the one where you might want to have a sales rep adding someone to a specific list. There are other scenarios with Engagement Studio programs where, based on an action that someone took or didn't take within a program, or them meeting a criteria or not meeting it, you might want to remove them from a list. So there are different use cases, but typically dynamic lists are going to be the way that you're going to want to go because it's just reducing so much of that manual time. The other thing I'll call out here as we're building this is public lists. So inside of account engagement, anytime you send an email, you're typically going to have a little link on the bottom that says update email preferences to give your audience the option to opt out of that email communication, and also just to visit their preference center and opt into other communications if they'd like. And so this is where you have to set that up. In order to make this appear on a preference center, we have to flag the public list, and then you have to give it a label, and you can give it a description if you want as well. So we could say all the latest happenings. Probably not really a full sentence or grammar, but for the purpose of the example today, that's what we're going to roll with. And then we'll select what preference page we want to be available to this list, and we'll click Set Rules. And then once we get into the interface here, I'm going to add a couple of new rules and just talk you through how this works. So we have match types. We have match all or match any. As you can see, match all is currently selected, and that gives you your and logic. If you wanted to switch to or logic, you switch it to match any. And then you can also do more complex and or logic by adding what's called a rule group. And we can come in here and we can add additional rules down here. And we could switch this to match any, keep the one up top to match all. And then we could get rid of one of these if we want. And we could say, if this is true and this or this is true, then we want to add someone to this particular list. So a lot of flexibility, and you can get pretty granular there. And then there are a ton of options when you're building a dynamic list in the system. I always encourage clients, when you're first getting familiar, just get in there, start playing around with it, see what is possible, start clicking around and looking, okay, prospect default field. These are some of the options that I have. And again, these are the standard out-of-the-box fields that start syncing once you have that connection between account engagement and Salesforce in place. And there's a lot of different options. The place that a lot of clients typically start, and I'll give you the whole run through here, is they typically start with campaign membership. So we could come in here and we could say prospect CRM campaign is new customer onboarding. And the way this would work is you would want to have what's called a completion action set up on that initial landing page and form that our test prospect Kurt Connors submitted earlier, so that when Kurt Connors submits that form, they automatically get added to the Salesforce campaign new customer onboarding. That Salesforce campaign then has that connection back and forth between account engagement, which is allowing it to also push up the engagement history metrics that we showed you and gave a brief introduction, and we'll talk more about later as well. And it pushes that data up into Salesforce for you, allows you to do some custom reporting as well inside of Salesforce. So that's how you would work on that. And then inside of account engagement, you then have this dynamic list, which is pulling in only those people that are a member of the new customer onboarding campaign. And then this list could then be used either to send out a newsletter type of send or one-off send via a list email, which we're going to get into here, or it could be used as a triggered send in an Engagement Studio program to feed that program. So that's one of the common examples. You can even get more granular than that. You can do it by the campaign and the status. So we could say new customer onboarding is status of responded. Those are just the out of the box, and you can change those in Salesforce to anything that you want. So those are a couple of common use cases. There's also the default field that we looked at already, or any of your custom fields can commonly be used. So another example here is we have this custom audience type field. So we can go in here and we can say audience type is donor, if we have any nonprofit friends on the call today, or we could say audience type is advisor. So that's just a common field audience type that many organizations will have. And any custom fields that you've created in account engagement that have a mapping to Salesforce will be available here for you to use. You also have custom objects like we talked about, where you can better segment your data based on custom Salesforce objects and the fields within those objects. And you also have account fields, you have opportunity fields. So if you want to use like an opportunity status, things like that, you have the ability to do that. One other thing that I'll show you here, which is really nice in relation to the conversation of oversaturating your clients or constituents with too many emails, you have this prospect has been emailed, and you can put at least 5 times in the last 30 days, or you can use weeks as your barometer there. So that's just a way that you can help make sure that your prospects are not receiving too many emails. And then you could use a list that had this criteria in it as a suppression list on an Engagement Studio program. So that's one of the ways that you can use this. And there's so many other things that you can do here. Not going to go through everything, but for our actual exercise and example, we're going to say prospect default field industry is media. And then we're going to click run rules. You could click preview. It takes a few minutes to populate. Not really a necessity on a dynamic list, because if you get a list populated, you run the rules and you realize that your numbers are off based on what you had in mind, likely you just put a criteria in incorrectly, and you might just need to go in and tweak that. So you can either edit and adjust that in this dynamic list, or you could just delete it, create a new one. It's very simple, as you see, to go in and create those additional lists in your org. So we'll click run rules, click OK. It'll take a few minutes for it to start matching prospects, but I'll show you, I have a list that I built out previously here called top of mind program, account-based marketing webinar example. And this is the exact same criteria. If I switch over to the details tab, prospect default field industry is media. So within a few minutes, that other list will have this same audience. We've got our team at the Daily Bugle here, Peter Parker, Eddie Brock, J. Jonah Jameson, Betty Brandt, that match our list. And we'll use that list here in a few minutes as we look at emails and Engagement Studio programs as well.